Thanks, Jarek. Thanks, guys, for being here again today. Why don't you go ahead and get started with your questions?
Coach, with no one in that starting lineup instead of Spencer, how does that kind of change the complexion of what you guys are doing out there? And obviously, it seems like a little bit different style of play there with no one.
Yeah, and it's going to be on the offensive side of it. Spencer, as we know, is one of the, I think, as good a shooter as there is, right? So you've got different spacing on the floor with Spencer, AJ, and Trey, and the way that Isaiah shot the ball. And Ty hasn't done as much in terms of shooting the ball from the 3-point line, and so that changes some of the dynamics at the offensive end. So we don't need to change a lot of what we're doing, Nick, but there are some subtle things that we need to do differently. Knowing that Spencer, maybe out for another game or two, and Ty is going to be in that spot a lot. At the other end of the floor, Ty's what he does defensively, his size, and then as we saw again, his impact in terms of rebounding. Those are things that where we're a little bit better. Spencer's doesn't rebound it the way Ty does, and doesn't have the size and length and the physicality to defend the way that Ty does. So we pick up some of that at the defensive end. We miss Spencer's shooting at the offensive end and some of the spacing. But Ty he really understands cutting. He understands how to get himself in spots where he can get to the basket. He offensive rebounds. So he has an impact on the offensive end. It's just different than what Spencer does.
What's on Spencer's time frame?
Yeah, it's better than it was yesterday. That's the report I get each day from Bish, is that it's a little bit better than it was the night before, but still he walked a little bit and jogged a little bit on the court, but he's not ready to practice today.
Defensively, you mentioned you're not real happy with how the first 10 minutes of Bradley's game went.
Yeah.
Change there, and how would you assess where this group is defensively going into this game?
Yeah, and I think you hit the nail on the head there, Nick. Yeah, we need to play harder. Plain and simple, we need to play harder defensively. A guy gets in a spot and he starts to run off screens, and we're already a step and a half behind him from the get-go. As soon as we get bumped a little bit on a ball screen, we're behind. Instead of getting through it and getting in front of a guy, we're immediately behind because we're not playing hard enough. So that it's going to have to that has to change. You aren't going to be a great defensive team until you play really hard on every single possession and each part of that possession, and we're not doing that right now. We'll work on it again today. We got, as we know, we got a good team coming in here tomorrow night. So, but man, to answer your question, Nick, we need to play harder. We need to defend with more purpose. And there's an aspect of that. You got to be able to scouting report. You've got to be able to do that and understand why we're guarding things a certain way, or take this away, take that away. You got to be able to think and defend at the same time. Like, that part of it's always been very important for us. Trying to make it by taking things away from the team we're playing against, trying to make it difficult for them. But you have to be able to set that aside and play your butt off, and we're not doing that defensively. We just aren't playing hard enough at that end of the floor.
What have you found is the best way throughout your career to address the team when effort is kind of the center of things?
Yeah, there's a couple parts to it, Cole, and there usually is. And we watched after the Illinois State game. We watched, I think it was 17 clips that we watched, and I talked to him on each one of them about what it was that hurt us on that play or that play, and more of them than not, it was playing hard. So you go through it on the film and you talk about it. You go to the practice floor and you work on it. And then the last thing I tell you, continuing to grow individually as a player, continuing to grow as a team, and being able to, as I talked about just a second ago, absorb the scouting report. Go out there and be able to think, and all right, here's what they're running, and I got to go over here and I got to take this away. Anytime you're thinking, it slows you down a little bit in terms of your movement and how hard you're playing, how aggressive you are. Your brain gets in the way of those things. That's pretty natural. That's pretty common. We've got enough older guys that shouldn't be in the way right now. That shouldn't bother Isaiah. That shouldn't bother Ty. That shouldn't bother Fife, right? I mean, that is a process for younger guys to get through. We have enough older guys that it shouldn't bother them. Being able to do the scouting report stuff and play their butt off. So just continuing to work on that part of the growth.
What is it that makes Indiana State good? What's the strength?
Yeah, that backcourt of Barnes and Key is they've been one of the better backcourts in the league and already, and they certainly are again this year. Cooper Neese played really well to end the year last year, Gare, and he's picked up where he left off. So you've got three guys now in that backcourt that have some experience. With Key and Barnes have a ton of experience. Both those guys are playmakers. Barnes has done a great job this year getting teammates involved, running off some different screens. So it isn't maybe as much or just him using a ball screen. He's doing it in different ways to get to scoring opportunities, and his ability to involve his teammates right now. This is probably the best that it's been in his career in terms of doing that. And then in the two freshmen inside, the two games that they've played in league play. I mean, not just looking at their numbers, but watching them. Two very impressive freshmen. So you've got two guys inside that can both score the ball if you play them one-on-one. And then who do you help off of? You got one of those guys on each block, and then you got Barnes, Key, and Cooper Neese standing on the three-point line. Three guys with experience. They're all shooting 40, 41% from the three-point line. Key and Barnes are all conference-type guys. That from a defensive standpoint, that's the biggest challenge is the two freshman inside guys are averaging, I think, 14 and 16 in league play and shooting a high percentage and getting their stuff around the basket because teams don't want to help. And I don't blame them. We're still, we're trying to figure out where do you help from when you got all conference players standing on the three-point line. And then they've got, now they've got two seniors coming off their bench, which is always nice to have some experience. Williams and Kessinger were starters last year. Now they come off the bench as seniors. And then a couple other young guys that come in off the bench and help their team. So a lot of good parts.
Feels like you're catching them too, where they're playing some of their best basketball. They started slow, but it looks like they.
Yeah, so they weren't able to be in their arena to start the year. They're renovating the Holman Center, and maybe it's done now and completed. But they were going through that process, so they were not able to play games in their home arena. So they were playing neutral site games or they were playing road games, and got off to part of that was Dayton, Louisville, teams that are in the top 25. But everything was on away from home to start. And going into that game against Drake, they had won 8 in a row. They had gotten back home and played some home games. Also won some road games in that stretch of 8 consecutive wins. And their game at Drake was a good game, a really good game. And, 1 or 2 possession game with 2-3 minutes left that could have went either way would have been their 9th win in a row. So, yeah, they're playing great.
With Spence out, does James Spence maybe get an opportunity because he can bring a little bit to the perimeter?
Yeah, we've talked about James with the way that we're being defended. Is there there's some possessions or there's a spot for his ability to make threes, and that's what moved him up. In the fall, that's what moved him up in one of the scrimmages. Was our offense had gotten slowed down a little bit, and we threw him in there and he made a couple threes as our 5-man, and that brings a little bit of that shooting back that we don't have when Spence is out, and it also forces an adjustment or a change from the team we're playing against. When it's Fife and JD, they're probably not going to shoot a 3, and James is very capable and very good 3-point shooter. So we've talked about it, and James has continued to get his reps.
Offensively, Coach, seems like Trey's numbers have maybe dipped just slightly in league play. Is that maybe a product of his kind of quick start offensively in the non-conference, just being in the league and maybe jumping further up on the scouting report? And then additionally, are there things you can look at to maybe try and get him a little bit more involved schematically?
Yeah, and that's they've made it tough for him in the 2 league games. Yeah, they've pretty well stood right next to him. And then he caught some foul trouble in the Bradley game, so he wasn't on the floor as much in the Bradley game. Now he had 4 or 5, maybe 6 jump shots at Illinois State, but they were tough shots. You know, those guys were hanging all over him. We've seen that a little bit in the non-conference stuff, and we've seen it with different guys. And so you move that guy into some spots where you force the defenders to have to decide, are you going to run, you know, you're going to stand next to him when he's lifting on the sideline, and we got a 5-man rolling with AJ coming off a ball screen. And so now you got to decide, do we give that 5-man a chance rolling to the rim, or do we take Trey away on the sideline? So, yeah, there are some things, Josh, that we have done, some things that we've talked about to involve him just a little bit more. And then he may not be the one, you know, he may not get as many shots, or he may not be the one to shoot the basketball, but because of the way they're defending him, that means one of his teammates shoots a very high percentage shot. So it's going to be a combination of all of those things. Anybody else? All right, thanks, gang.